I was 24 when my parents told me to pack my things and leave. You're just wasting space here, Ethan, my father said, his tone cold and final, like he'd been rehearsing that line for weeks. My mother didn't look at me, just stirred her coffee and mumbled something about how I needed to learn responsibility. The irony didn't even sting anymore. Not when my older sister, Madison, was sitting right there at the kitchen table, smiling like she'd just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. And in a way, she had, because they'd just given her $1 million to start her dream business. $1 million. In cash, transferred straight from Dad's account to hers. He even printed out the confirmation page like it was a trophy. "We believe in you, Maddie," he said, beaming. "This will finally put the family name on the map." She giggled, flipped her hair, and kissed his cheek like the golden child she'd always been. Meanwhile, I stood by the door with my half-packed duffel bag, the air thick with the smell of fresh espresso and favoritism. I'd seen it coming for years. Madison was the golden child, the prodigy, the princess who could do no wrong. I was the quiet one, the drifter, the one who didn't know what he wanted in life. She flunked out of college twice before deciding she was an entrepreneur, and somehow that made her visionary. I dropped out once to help pay the mortgage when Dad lost his job, and that made me lazy. She crashed 2 cars before age 22, and each time Dad bought her another one. I worked part-time delivering groceries and saved enough to buy a beat-up Honda Civic. And still, my mom asked if I really thought this was a smart investment. So when the $1 million announcement happened, I wasn't even angry, just tired. I'd spent years trying to earn approval that never came, years listening to them brag about Madison's latest venture while asking me to keep it down whenever I tried to talk about something I was proud of. "What about me?" I asked quietly that morning. "Am I supposed to just leave?" My father didn't even blink. "You're 24. Time to be a man. Madison's taking real risks for her future. What are you doing?" "Working," I said. "Saving." He laughed, short and sharp. "Saving what? Pennies? You don't build a life on scraps, son." My mom added, "You could learn something from your sister. She's not afraid to dream big." I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't. Because what was the point? Every time I tried to explain myself in the past, it turned into another lecture about attitude or gratitude. So I just zipped my bag and nodded. "All right," I said. "Guess I'll figure it out." I left that day with $362 in my bank account, an old Civic that coughed every time I hit second gear, and no idea what I was supposed to do next. But I also left with something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. No more pretending. No more begging for scraps of respect. Just me, the road, and the open question of who I could be when I wasn't being told I was a disappointment. The first few nights were rough. I slept in the car by the beach because it was free and quiet. The sound of the waves helped me think. I showered at a gym that offered a 7-day trial and lived off dollar menu sandwiches. But even in those moments, I felt oddly free. Every day, I worked night shifts loading trucks at a distribution warehouse, and every morning, I sat in my car, watching the sunrise while sketching out ideas in a notebook. I'd always been good with computers. When I was a kid, I used to fix old laptops for neighbors and build simple websites for local shops. It was just a hobby, but now it felt like something I could build on. I started freelancing online, taking whatever tech gigs I could find, fixing code, designing basic landing pages, setting up e-commerce stores. It didn't pay much at first, but slowly, I built a small client base. Meanwhile, Madison's business was everywhere. She opened a luxury lifestyle boutique downtown. It was the kind of store that sold $200 candles and called them art. My parents visited weekly, bragging to their friends about how our daughter is a CEO now. She even did a local news interview, talking about female empowerment through fragrance. I watched the segment from the break room one night while eating a microwave burrito. My coworker Tony glanced at the TV, then at me. "Hey, that your sister?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "She's got that millionaire smile, huh?" he joked. "Yeah," I said again, but softer this time. I wasn't jealous. At least, that's what I told myself. But there were nights when I lay in the back seat of my car, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right about me. Maybe I was the disappointment. Maybe some people were just born to have it all handed to them, while others had to claw their way through life. But then I'd remember the way my dad's voice had cracked when he said, "You're wasting space," and something inside me hardened. If they thought I was a waste of space, I'd build something so big it would make them choke on those words. So I doubled down. I saved every penny I could, taught myself new skills, and started building something real, a software platform for small businesses to manage their inventory. It started as a side project, but soon, a few of my clients wanted to try it. Then they told others. Within a year, I had 20 paying users, then 50, then 100. I wasn't rich, not even close, but it was the first time I felt like I was actually going somewhere. During that time, Madison's store got fancier. She hired influencers, hosted champagne nights, and posted motivational quotes about hustle while wearing designer heels. Mom sent me every article, every photo, every new milestone. "You should be proud of your sister," she'd say over text. "She's really doing it." I never replied. Then one night, after a particularly long shift, I got a voicemail from Dad. "Ethan," he said, "we heard you've been doing some kind of tech thing? That's nice, son. But listen, Madison's expanding. She needs help setting up her website. Why don't you give her a hand? It'd be good practice for you, and family should help family." I remember staring at my phone for a long time, the sound of traffic humming outside my window. Help her. The same sister who hadn't even asked how I was doing in years. The same parents who tossed me out like I was a burden. I didn't call back. But that was the night I knew something had shifted. I wasn't the same broke kid sleeping in his car anymore. I had something they didn't even see coming: momentum. A few months later, my platform landed a major client, an independent retailer chain that signed a six-figure contract. I quit the warehouse job, rented a small apartment, and officially registered my company. For the first time, I had an office, a business bank account, and a reason to wake up every morning. But that's also when the calls started coming again, from my parents, from Madison, from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. At first, it was casual. "How have you been? We should catch up." But beneath the politeness, I could hear something else: curiosity, maybe even a little fear. And then, one afternoon, my mom called out of the blue. "Ethan," she said sweetly, "Madison's been having a tough time lately. Sales are slowing down. Maybe you could, help her out? You're doing well now, aren't you?" That was the first crack in the golden image they'd built around her. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, the universe was finally balancing the scales. But I didn't know yet how bad it was going to get, how fast everything she'd built would start to crumble, or how far my parents would go to drag me back into their mess. And I definitely didn't know that, in the end, it wouldn't just be about money. It would be about control, pride, and the one thing my family never thought I'd have: power. That moment was still ahead of me. I just didn't see it coming yet. It started slowly, the way tension always does in families like mine. Little comments slipped into phone calls, old patterns sneaking back in through polite voices. For months, I'd been trying to keep my distance, focusing on growing my software company, but somehow, my family always found a way to pull me back in. My mother called one Sunday afternoon, right as I was preparing a pitch for an investor. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said, her tone sugary but sharp underneath, "your sister's boutique has been struggling a bit lately. You know how the economy is." I didn't respond right away. "She just needs a bit of guidance, that's all," Mom continued. "You're so good with business now. Maybe you could look at her website, fix it up a little. Your family, after all." Family. That word again. It had become their favorite weapon. "I'm a bit busy right now, Mom," I said carefully. "Maybe she should hire a developer." There was a pause, then the sigh I knew too well. "Ethan, don't be difficult. She's your sister. You know she supported you when no one else did." That one made me laugh, quietly, bitterly. Supported me? She hadn't even called me after I left home. "Mom, I don't think helping with her boutique is." But she interrupted. "Don't be selfish, Ethan. You owe this family after all we've done for you." I just hung up. For years, I'd been the one expected to apologize, to make peace, to accept that I was always less than. Not anymore. A few days later, Madison herself called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. "Ethan," she said brightly, as if we were best friends. "Oh my God, it's been forever." "Yeah," I said flatly. "So," she continued, "Mom probably told you. I've been going through a little business hiccup. Nothing serious. Just some cash flow stuff. But I figured since you're in the business world now," she emphasized it like it was some kind of novelty, "maybe you could help me out." I didn't say anything, so she went on. "I was thinking maybe you could invest. Like, a small partnership? just to get us through this season. It'd be good PR for you too. I laughed out loud. You want me to invest in your candle shop? Her tone immediately sharpened. It's not a candle shop, Ethan. It's a luxury lifestyle brand. And yes, I thought you'd want to help your sister instead of laughing at her. I didn't laugh at you, I said. I laughed at the idea that you think I'd fund the same people who kicked me out. There was a pause, heavy loaded. So that's how it is, she said coldly. You're still holding a grudge. I'm not holding anything, I said. I just learned. She hung up without another word. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my office unannounced. I was in the middle of a meeting when the receptionist knocked and whispered, "There's an older couple here. Says they're your parents." My stomach dropped. When I stepped into the hallway, there they were. My dad in his usual pressed shirt, and my mom clutching her purse like it held the moral high ground. "Ethan," Dad said, his voice low but firm. "You need to stop acting like a stranger." I blinked. "You threw me out." He waved a hand. "You needed to learn responsibility. And look, it worked. You've done well. You should thank us." That line nearly made me choke. Thank them for making me sleep in my car? For years of humiliation? Before I could answer, Mom chimed in. "We're not here to argue, honey. We just want you to do the right thing. Madison's worked so hard, and she's been under so much stress. You're successful now. You can afford to help her." "And by help, you mean?" Dad crossed his arms. "A loan, or an investment. You could save her business." I stared at them both. "You gave her $1 million, remember?" "That was years ago," Mom said. "Businesses take time to grow. And mine didn't get a single cent," I said. "But I'm the one who's supposed to bail her out." Dad's jaw tightened. "Don't twist this. You wouldn't even have that business if we hadn't pushed you out of the house." There it was, the classic rewrite of history. Somehow, their cruelty had become tough love. "I think we're done here," I said quietly, turning toward my office door. Mom called after me. "You'll regret this, Ethan. Family should stand together." But they left before I could reply. For a few weeks, I didn't hear from them. I buried myself in work, building partnerships, hiring 2 developers, and expanding into new markets. But the silence didn't last. It never did. It started with small things. A few relatives checking in, asking how I was, then steering the conversation toward Madison's rough patch. An aunt sent me a long message about how family fortunes rise and fall together. A cousin tagged me in one of Madison's desperate Instagram posts. Support small businesses. Then came the family gathering. My parents insisted I attend my dad's birthday dinner. "It'll mean a lot to him," Mom said over the phone. "And Madison will be there too. We all need to reconnect." Every instinct told me to skip it, but something in me wanted to face them. Maybe I wanted to see if anything had changed. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need their approval anymore. The restaurant was one of those expensive places my parents loved. White tablecloths, gold-rimmed plates, and waiters who spoke in whispers. When I walked in, the conversation paused. Madison was already there, in a designer dress, her hair perfectly styled. She smiled like a celebrity greeting a fan. "Ethan," she said, standing to hug me. "Look at you. You actually clean up nice." "Thanks," I said, taking my seat. Dad raised a glass. "To family," he said. "And to Madison, who's been working tirelessly to rebuild after some setbacks." The table clapped. I didn't. Madison smirked. "It's been a tough year, but you know me. I never give up. Some people would quit, but I'm not like that." She glanced at me as she said it. I said nothing, just sipped my water. Then Dad turned to me. "So, Ethan, how's the little tech thing going?" "Little tech thing? It's going well," I said evenly. "We're expanding into Europe next quarter." Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's wonderful, dear. You should help your sister with some of that expansion experience. Maybe even." "Mom," I interrupted. "Let's not." The table went quiet. Madison tilted her head. "Wow, someone's touchy. I was just saying it'd be nice to work together, you know? Combine brains and beauty." Dad chuckled. "She's got a point. You're both talented in your own ways." "Yeah," I said. "Except one of us built something from scratch, and the other got $1 million head start." The air went ice cold. Madison's smile froze. "Ethan," Mom whispered sharply. "That's uncalled for." "No," I said, my voice calm. "What's uncalled for is pretending none of this ever happened." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. This is supposed to be a celebration." Madison leaned back, smirking again. "It's fine, Dad. Some people just can't handle watching others succeed." I laughed under my breath. Right. That must be it. Dinner ended early. On the way out, Mom grabbed my arm. You embarrassed us tonight, she hissed. You think your money makes you better than this family? I looked her straight in the eye. No, Mom. You made it clear years ago I wasn't part of this family. She let go without another word. Over the next few months, things escalated. Madison's boutique began posting discount sales every week. Then she deleted the comments section on her posts. Eventually, I started hearing rumors from clients, from mutual acquaintances, that she owed vendors tens of thousands. And then my parents started calling again, every day, first with guilt, then with anger. You're letting your sister fail, Dad said in one voicemail. We raised you better than this. It would have been almost funny if it didn't sting so much. After everything they'd done, after years of being invisible, they still thought I owed them. The last straw came one afternoon when I got home from work and found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a handwritten letter from my mom. Ethan, we know you're doing well, and we're proud of you. But Madison is drowning. We've already mortgaged part of the house to help her, but it's not enough. Please, if you have any decency left, save your sister's dream. She's your blood. There was a check request enclosed. For $250,000. I sat on the couch for a long time, the letter in my hands, my mind racing through every memory, every insult, every you're not enough, every dinner where they toasted her and ignored me. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt calm, detached, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. They wanted to play games with guilt and manipulation? Fine, I'd play too. But this time, I wouldn't be the quiet one sitting at the table pretending not to notice the knives pointed my way. This time, I'd make sure they finally saw who they were dealing with. The unraveling began quietly, like a slow leak that no one notices until the floor gives way. For weeks, I tried to ignore the signs. Late-night messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, vague, urgent calls from my parents, and a growing sense that something was moving behind the scenes. But I didn't want to care. I was busy. My company had just closed another major partnership. I'd hired new staff. And for once, life actually felt stable. Then, one morning, I got an alert from my bank. A large transfer, $50,000, had been flagged for review. My stomach dropped. I hadn't made any transfer that week. I logged in immediately and froze. There it was, a pending transaction from one of my business accounts, routed to an unfamiliar entity under my sister's name. I called the bank. That transfer wasn't authorized, I said quickly. I didn't make it. The rep put me on hold, then returned with a confused tone. Sir, the request came through a joint authorization. Someone logged in using a linked account with matching family credentials. Family credentials? Yes, sir. The system shows that the request was made by an account connected to your parents' banking profile. My chest tightened. That couldn't be right. I hadn't linked any accounts with my family since I left home, years ago. But then it hit me. When I was younger, my father had insisted on helping me manage my savings. He'd opened a family joint account and said it was for emergencies. I'd forgotten about it, never used it again after leaving. But apparently, he hadn't. I immediately froze the transaction and changed every password I could think of. When I checked my emails, there were multiple failed login attempts from unknown devices. My dad's old email was listed on one of the recovery contacts. My hands were shaking. I called him straight away. He picked up on the third ring, his voice calm. Ethan, you don't have to be so dramatic. What did you do? I demanded. Why is there a transfer from my account to Madison's name? He sighed. We needed to move some money temporarily. Madison's business was about to lose its lease. We'll pay it back. I almost laughed. You took money from my company without asking. Don't exaggerate, he snapped. It's all in the family. We've helped you enough over the years. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You kicked me out, Dad. That was for your own good, he said, his tone sharp now. You're successful because we pushed you. So you owe this family some gratitude. It's time you give back. I was silent for a long time. Then I said quietly, you didn't give me anything. You gave her everything. Don't talk about your sister that way, he barked. She's trying. She's had a hard year. So you stole from me? I borrowed it, he said quickly. You can't even feel it missing. You're making good money now. Don't act like it's some tragedy. My blood boiled. You could have asked. He laughed. If I asked, you'd have said no. He hung up before I could answer. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not anger this time, but something deeper. A quiet, irreversible shift. I'd always known my parents favored Madison, but I hadn't realized how far they'd go for her. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was betrayal. I sat at my desk for nearly an hour, staring at the frozen transfer. The betrayal wasn't about the money. It was about the entitlement, the way they saw my success as theirs. The way they thought they could still reach into my life and take whatever they wanted, just because I shared their last name. That evening, I drove to their house, the same one I'd been thrown out of 5 years earlier. The drive felt longer than I remembered. When I pulled up, Madison's brand new SUV was parked in the driveway, gleaming under the porch light. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "Ethan," she said sweetly, like nothing had happened. "You look tired. Work too hard, don't you?" I didn't respond. "Where's Dad?" She hesitated. "In the living room." "But can't we just—" "I'm not here to chat, Mom." Her smile faltered, and I walked past her into the house. Dad was watching TV, Madison sitting on the couch beside him, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she smirked. Well, the prodigal son returns." "Did you do it?" I asked. She blinked. "Do what?" "Authorize a transfer from my company account." Her smirk vanished. She glanced at Dad, then back at me. "Relax, it was just temporary." I stared at her. "You did do it." She rolled her eyes. "Dad said it'd be fine. I needed it to cover payroll for a month." "You make 6 figures a year. What's 50 grand to you?" I couldn't speak for a second. The audacity was staggering. That money wasn't just mine. It was my employees', my company's. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You think your little startup's some empire? You wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for Dad's connections." I turned to my father. "You gave her access to my account?" He didn't even look guilty. "It's all in the family, Ethan. Stop being selfish. You wouldn't even notice it missing." "I already froze the account," I said quietly. "And I filed a fraud report." The room went silent. Mom gasped. "You what?" "I filed a fraud report," I repeated. "It's already under review." Dad stood up, his face red. "Do you have any idea what you've done? That could ruin your sister's business." "Good," I said. "Maybe it's time she learned what consequences feel like." Mom's voice cracked. "Ethan, please. You're going to tear this family apart." I laughed bitterly. "You already did." I turned to leave, but Madison stood up suddenly, her face twisted with rage. "You think you're so perfect now? You think that stupid little app makes you better than us?" "No," I said calmly. "I think it proves you don't need $1 million handout to build something real." She grabbed a glass from the coffee table and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall near me. My mother screamed. My father shouted her name. But I just stood there, unmoving. "That's the difference between us, Maddie," I said quietly. "You destroy things when you don't get your way." I built. Then I walked out. That night, I stayed awake in my apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. I thought about every moment that had led to this. The years of neglect, the insults disguised as advice, the way they had convinced me that I was worthless unless I was like her. But that night, I stopped being their scapegoat. The next morning, I got a call from my bank. The fraud report had triggered a freeze on all joint family accounts linked to mine, including my parents, their mortgage payments, their credit cards, everything. Within hours, my phone exploded with calls. Mom, Dad, Madison, dozens of missed calls, voicemails ranging from tearful pleas to furious rants. I didn't answer any of them. Later that evening, Mom sent me a long text. "Ethan, this has gone too far. Your father is furious, and Madison's account is frozen. She can't pay her employees. You've humiliated this family. Please call me." Then another one, minutes later. "Your father says if you don't fix this, you're no longer welcome in this house." I read both messages, then powered off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't guilt or anger. I felt peace. But peace didn't last. Because a few days later, I received a letter in the mail from a law firm. It was a formal demand letter from my parents' attorney, claiming that I had illegally restricted access to joint family funds and that immediate restitution was required. They threatened to take me to court for breach of fiduciary duty. It was absurd, but it also told me one thing. They weren't going to stop. They didn't just want money, they wanted control. And if they couldn't guilt it out of me, they'd try to scare it out of me. That was the moment I realized the truth. This wasn't just about Madison's failing business anymore. It was about power. My parents couldn't stand the fact that I had built something without them, that I'd broken free of their control. And now, they were trying to drag me back under. But they had no idea that by crossing that line, by stealing from me, they'd set something in motion they couldn't take back. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to fight back. And the next move? That was going to be mine. The legal letter hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't that I thought they could actually win. I knew they couldn't. Every dollar in my company had been earned cleanly, documented, and legally separated from anything tied to my family years ago. But the fact that they'd gone this far, that my own parents had hired a lawyer to threaten me, that broke something in me I didn't even realize was still there. For a few days, I felt hollow. I stopped checking emails, skipped meetings, ignored calls from my assistant. My apartment, once quiet but peaceful, now felt like a cage. I'd built everything from nothing, and yet the moment I thought I was free, they reached out and pulled me back into their storm. I'd always told myself that distance was protection, that as long as I stayed focused on work, I'd be untouchable. But now, they'd crossed into my world, the one place I thought was safe. My lawyer, Daniel, sat across from me in the conference room, flipping through the demand letter with a mix of confusion and disbelief. "This is ridiculous," he said finally. "They're claiming joint family ownership over your business?" I nodded quietly. He frowned. "Based on what? I've gone through your corporate filings. You're the sole shareholder. Your parents have zero stake in anything." "They don't need a stake," I said. "They just need noise. Drama. Something to make me react." He leaned back. "So what do you want to do?" I hesitated. "Nothing," I said finally. "Not yet." Because I knew my parents. They'd expect me to fight back immediately, to send angry letters, to defend myself, to feed the conflict. That's how it always worked. They'd throw chaos at me, and I'd exhaust myself trying to make sense of it. But not this time. Instead, I waited. For the next few weeks, I went through the motions of my life, but everything felt heavier. My appetite disappeared. My focus slipped. Even my employees noticed. One of them, a quiet developer named Priya, asked me one morning if I was okay. "You've been different lately," she said gently. I just smiled. "Family stuff." She nodded like she understood, but she couldn't. Nobody could. At night, I'd sit by the window, staring at the ocean, wondering how things had turned so dark. The waves used to calm me. They used to make me feel small in a good way, like my problems were tiny ripples compared to the world. But now, the sound just reminded me how far I'd drifted from home. Still, I kept showing up. Because if there was one thing I'd learned since leaving that house, it was this: you don't stop moving, even when you're falling apart. The lawsuit never materialized. Not yet, anyway, but my parents' lawyers sent 2 more letters, each more threatening than the last. Then the gossip started. Relatives called to say they'd heard things. An aunt claimed my company was under investigation. A cousin texted me a screenshot of a Facebook post Madison had written. "Sometimes success goes to people who don't deserve it. Some of us actually work for what we have. Others just steal." The comments were full of sympathy. "You're so strong. Ignore the haters. Family can be so cruel." And every like, every share, every word of pity for her felt like another cut. But I stayed silent. Until one day, silence wasn't enough. Because while I was sitting in my office late one night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello." There was a pause, then a low voice. "Is this Ethan?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is Brian. I used to work for your sister." I sat up straighter. "Okay." He hesitated. "Look, I don't want trouble, but I thought you should know. She's been using your name. On paperwork, investor proposals, loan applications. She says you're a co-signer." My blood ran cold. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Positive," he said. "I quit because it got sketchy. The company's bleeding money, man. She's desperate. Said her brother's company could bail her out if the banks asked questions. I figured you'd want to know." I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence for a long time. Then I called Daniel. By the next morning, we'd pulled every record we could find: business registrations, loan filings, contracts. And there it was, clear as day. A falsified cosigner document with my forged signature attached. Madison had used my name to secure a $200,000 loan for her boutique. I wasn't angry. Not at first. Just numb. Because this wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was fraud. When I told my parents, their reaction wasn't shock or outrage. It was defensiveness. "She didn't mean any harm," Mom said. "She just needed help." "She forged my signature," I said slowly. That's a felony. Dad's voice was calm but cold. You're not really going to press charges, are you? She's your sister. She committed a crime. She's family, he shouted. You don't drag family through the mud over money. And there it was again, that word. Family. The word they used when they wanted to excuse anything. I hung up without saying another word. For a few days, I didn't know what to do. My lawyer told me I had enough evidence to press charges. But part of me, some naive, aching part, still hesitated. Because no matter how much they'd done, they were still my family. But then I thought about that night 5 years ago. About the duffel bag, the car seat, the cold ocean air. About the way my father had said, "You're wasting space here." And I realized something. They'd never hesitated to ruin me. So I filed the report. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Madison was called in for questioning. The loan officers confirmed her signature didn't match mine. Within a week, her accounts were frozen. That's when the messages started pouring in again. This time, not from my parents, but from Madison herself. At first, they were angry. You think you're better than me? You've always been jealous. You ruined my life, Ethan. Then they turned desperate. Please. I didn't mean to. I just needed help. Mom and Dad said you'd fix it. Please don't let them take everything. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The police didn't arrest her. First-time offender, cooperation, restitution plan. But the damage was done. Her business went under within months. The $1 million boutique became an empty storefront with faded gold lettering and a for lease sign. My parents didn't speak to me again for months after that. Word spread through the family like wildfire. Ethan destroyed his sister. He took things too far. He forgot where he came from. But I didn't care. Because somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, I found something I didn't realize I'd lost, my peace. I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. Every morning before work, I'd jog along the beach, headphones in, watching the sun crawl over the horizon. I rented a small office space by the water where I could hear the waves while I worked. My company grew, steadily, quietly, without noise or drama. I stopped trying to prove anything. Until one morning, months later, I got an email from a real estate agency. My offer on a beachfront villa had been accepted. It wasn't about showing off. It was about closing a circle. I'd lived in my car by that same beach years ago. Now, I owned a home overlooking it. I stood in the empty living room that first night, the ocean breeze spilling through the windows, and thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running away from my family. I felt like I was finally standing on my own ground. But life has a way of making sure the past doesn't stay buried for long. Because just when I thought I'd moved on, when I believed the story was over, I saw a familiar car pull up outside my villa. My parents stepped out first. And then, behind them, Madison. And from the look on her face, I could tell the storm wasn't over yet. I remember standing on the balcony of my new villa, barefoot, coffee mug in hand, when I saw their car. The silver Lexus I'd seen parked outside my parents' house countless times, now creeping along the street like it didn't want to be seen. It stopped just past my driveway, idling for a moment before pulling in. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen them since everything fell apart. Not after the fraud report, not after the fallout. A part of me had hoped they'd just move on, that maybe silence would be the cleanest ending we could get. But here they were, my parents and Madison, stepping out of the car, dressed as if this were just another polite visit. Madison wore oversized sunglasses and a beige coat that probably cost more than the average monthly rent. Mom clutched her purse with that same self-righteous tightness she always had before a serious talk. Dad walked a step ahead, his hand resting protectively on Madison's shoulder like she was still the fragile little angel who could do no wrong. I didn't move. I just sipped my coffee and waited. When they reached the gate, Mom called out first. "Ethan," she said brightly, like she was greeting an old friend. "You look wonderful. This place is beautiful." I didn't answer. Dad followed, his voice firm but fake friendly. "We were in the area. Thought we'd stop by. You know, see how you've been doing." I set my cup down on the railing. "You drove 3 hours to see how I've been doing." He hesitated, then smiled tightly. "You know your mother worries. And, well, it's been too long." Madison finally spoke, her voice soft, carefully rehearsed. "Hi, Ethan." I looked down at her. "Hi." There was silence. The waves crashed behind me. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Can we come in? It's chilly out here. I considered saying no, but I didn't. Something in me wanted to hear what they had to say. Inside, the air was awkward. They sat on my white couch like guests who didn't belong there, glancing around at the marble floors, the open view of the beach, the minimalist decor, the kind of space that said, I made this life myself. Mom smiled too wide. You've really done well for yourself, Ethan. We're proud of you. That word again. Proud. It didn't sound like pride. It sounded like an afterthought, like something she was supposed to say. I leaned against the counter. So what is this, really? Dad sighed. It's not about the past. We've all made mistakes. What matters is family. Don't, I said sharply. Don't use that word again. Madison looked up, her voice shaky. Ethan, I'm sorry. For everything. For the money. For the lies. I didn't know what else to do. Her tone almost sounded genuine. Almost. I stayed quiet. She took off her sunglasses, revealing tired eyes. Red, puffy, desperate. I lost everything, she said softly. The house. The car. My savings. The bank took what little I had left. I'm staying with Mom and Dad now. I nodded slowly. And she hesitated. And I need help. Just a little. Not money. Guidance. I know you're good at this business stuff. I was hoping maybe we could partner on something new. I've been working on an idea. I actually laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out. You forged my name, nearly got me investigated for fraud, and now you want to go into business with me? Her eyes filled with tears. Please, Ethan. I'm not asking for a handout. I just need a chance. Dad leaned forward. Son, she's learned her lesson. We all have. This family has been through enough. Why don't you show some compassion? I stared at him, that familiar wave of disbelief washing over me again. He still didn't get it. None of them did. Mom tried to soften the tone. Ethan, sweetheart, your sister's lost so much. You have the means to help her rebuild. Think of it as healing the family. I looked at Madison. You still think life's about who you can use next, don't you? Her expression hardened. The tears stopped instantly. That's not fair. Oh, it's fair, I said. You didn't come here for forgiveness. You came because you need something. Silence. That was the moment I realized they weren't here out of guilt or reconciliation. They were here because they needed me again. And they'd rehearsed this little performance all the way down the coast. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly guess, was that over the past few months, I'd built something far beyond what they imagined. After Madison's fraud case, my company had caught the attention of several investors who admired how cleanly I handled the situation. One of them, an older venture capitalist named Harold Evans, had become something of a mentor to me. He helped me structure my company more professionally, new subsidiaries, holding companies, asset protections. He taught me how to move quietly, how to protect what I'd built. And one of the assets I'd recently acquired through a business partnership, a commercial real estate group that managed, among other things, high-value retail properties along the coast, including the building that used to house Madison's boutique. I hadn't planned it. It was part of a bulk acquisition. But when I found out, I couldn't help but notice the irony. Now, sitting there, watching her ask me for help again, something clicked. I smiled. You said you've been working on an idea? Madison brightened immediately. Yes, it's a boutique concept again, but this time it's more sustainable, eco-friendly luxury goods. Organic fabrics, handcrafted candles, minimal waste. It's very on trend. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. Sounds interesting. Where were you planning to set up? She shrugged. Maybe back at my old location. It's still empty, right? I tilted my head. You're sure about that? Her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Why? I smiled faintly. Because I bought that building 3 months ago. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. My parents exchanged glances. I didn't know, she said quietly. Of course you didn't, I replied. You don't keep track of anything that doesn't belong to you. Dad leaned forward. Ethan, what are you getting at? I'm saying, I said calmly. If you want to start your business there again, you'll need to go through my leasing company. And trust me, the rent isn't what it used to be. Madison's jaw tightened. That's cruel. No, I said. That's business. Mom's voice shook. You can't do that to your sister. I can, I said. And I already have. The silence that followed was the sweetest I'd ever heard. Madison stood abruptly. You think this makes you powerful, don't you? You think punishing me makes you better? I stood too, meeting her glare. No, I think it makes me free. She stared at me for a long moment before storming out, slamming the door behind her. Dad followed her, muttering something about ungrateful children. Mom lingered for a moment, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "You've changed, Ethan," she whispered. I nodded. "You're right." When the door closed, I sat back down and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But that wasn't the end. Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. News spread that Madison was trying to open a new business, but no one would lease to her. Word of her fraud case had circulated among local property owners, and her reputation was shot. Then one morning, I got an email from her. "Ethan, I don't know what you've been telling people, but no one will rent to me. Every landlord says the same thing. We heard about your past. I'm begging you, please stop. I can't even get a bank account now." I didn't respond, but I didn't need to. The truth had done all the work for me. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel satisfied. What I felt was clarity. They'd spent years controlling me, dismissing me, taking from me. And now, without lifting a finger, I'd taken back something they could never reclaim, their illusion of power. I spent the next few months focused on work again. My company expanded into 3 countries, my investments grew, and my reputation in the business world solidified. I was invited to speak at a conference on resilience and entrepreneurship, something that would have made my father proud once upon a time. And then, one afternoon, I got a letter, not from my parents, not from Madison, but from my family's attorney. It wasn't a threat this time. It was an invitation. My parents were selling their home, the same one they'd kicked me out of, and they wanted me to consider buying it to keep it in the family. I almost laughed when I read it. The house that had once been their throne, their symbol of control, was now something they wanted me to preserve. I called my lawyer. "Buy it," I said simply. "All cash." Within 2 weeks, the deed was in my name. I didn't move in. I didn't even visit. I had the house appraised, cleaned, and quietly listed it for sale again. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. But when my parents found out, when they realized I'd bought their house just to sell it, they finally reached out again. Not through letters, not through lawyers, through Madison. She showed up at my villa one evening, trembling, eyes red from crying. "They're losing everything," she said quietly. "Mom and Dad can't afford the rent on their new place. They're scared." I stared at her. "And what do you want me to do?" Her voice broke. "I don't know. Maybe just talk to them. Please." I didn't answer right away, because part of me wanted to say no, to shut the door and never look back. But another part of me, some small, tired fragment that still remembered who I used to be, wanted to see how far the fall had gone. So I agreed. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tell them I'll come by." And that's how I found myself, the next day, standing once again in front of the house I grew up in. Except this time, it wasn't their house anymore. It was mine. When I pulled into the driveway the next afternoon, the house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was chipped, the porch light hung at an angle, and the yard, once meticulously kept by my father, was overrun with weeds. It didn't look like the home I'd grown up in. It looked like a shell, hollowed out by the years and the pride that used to fill it. I parked, stepped out, and for a moment, just stood there, staring at the front door. The same door I'd walked through countless times, the same one they'd slammed behind me when I left at 24 with a duffel bag and nowhere to go. Now it was mine. Every nail, every board, every inch of it. Madison was waiting by the door. She looked smaller too, less polished, more human. The expensive coat was gone, replaced with an oversized sweater and sneakers. Her hair was tied back messily, her face pale. When she saw me, she smiled weakly. "They're inside," she said quietly. I nodded and followed her in. The smell hit me first. Dust, stale air, and something faintly sour. My mother sat on the couch, clutching a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. My father sat beside her, shoulders slumped, staring blankly at the floor. They both looked older, much older than the last time I'd seen them. The arrogance was gone. The certainty. All that was left was fatigue. Mom looked up first. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Ethan," she said softly, "thank you for coming." I stood in the doorway, saying nothing. Dad tried to smile. "You've done well, son. We heard about the company, the villa, the success." His voice cracked on the last word. "Why am I here?" I asked quietly. Mom set her cup down carefully. "We're selling the house. We can't afford the upkeep anymore. Your father's retirement funds are tied up, and," she hesitated, "we were hoping maybe you'd help." Buy it, keep it in the family. I already did, I said. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad frowned. What? I bought the house 2 weeks ago, I said calmly. Didn't your lawyer tell you? Mom's mouth opened slightly. You bought it. Yes, I said. It's mine now. Dad's face went pale. You can't just. I can't, I said. And I did. He stood up, anger flashing in his eyes for the first time. You think this is funny? Buying your own parents' house out from under them? No, I said. I think it's poetic. Mom began to cry. Ethan, please. We've made mistakes, but this isn't right. We're your family. I took a deep breath. You stopped being my family the day you told me I was wasting space. The day you chose her over me. The day you stole from me, lied about me, and made me feel like I didn't belong. Madison stood by the wall, frozen, her eyes darting between us. Dad's voice shook. So what now? You're going to throw us out? You think that makes you a man? I looked at him for a long time. No, I said quietly. I think surviving you did. He flinched, but said nothing. Mom reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You don't have to do this, she whispered. We can start over. We can. I cut her off. You had years to start over. I begged you for a chance back then. I asked for respect, not money. I asked to be treated like I mattered. You gave me silence. You gave her everything. Madison finally spoke, her voice trembling. Ethan, please. They've lost everything. Don't make this worse. I turned to her. You forged my signature. You almost destroyed everything I built. And now you want me to fix the mess again? You've never learned, Maddie. You never will. Tears filled her eyes. I said I was sorry. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't undo years of damage. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a clock somewhere in the kitchen. It felt like time itself was holding its breath. Then I pulled a folder from my jacket and set it on the table. These are the sale documents, I said. The house will be listed next week. You have 30 days to move out. Mom gasped. Ethan, no, please. I shook my head. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it to end it. To stop pretending there's anything left to save. Dad's jaw clenched. You think you're the victim in all this? You wouldn't even be standing here if we hadn't pushed you. I looked him dead in the eye. Then maybe you should have pushed harder. I might have gotten here sooner. He didn't have a response. Mom sobbed quietly into her hands. Madison stood motionless, tears sliding down her cheeks. I walked toward the door, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. When I reached it, I turned back one last time. You taught me that family means loyalty, but what you really meant was obedience. I spent years breaking myself trying to earn your love. Now I finally understand. I don't need it. Then I left. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long orange streaks across the lawn. The same yard I'd mowed as a kid, the same driveway I'd stood on the night they told me to leave. I walked down it slowly, feeling every step like it was closing a chapter I'd been stuck in for half my life. When I got to the car, Madison followed me out. Ethan, she called, running toward me. Wait. I turned. She stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. You don't have to do this. You could forgive them. You could forgive me. I looked at her sadly. You don't want forgiveness, Maddie. You want things to go back to the way they were. But that version of me, the one who'd give everything and expect nothing, that version died a long time ago. She swallowed hard. Then what now? You just drive away? Leave us with nothing? I nodded slowly. Exactly what you did to me. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to scream, to fight, to throw something like she always used to when things didn't go her way. But instead, she just stood there, eyes glistening, shoulders shaking. I hope someday you understand, I said quietly. Because I already have. Then I got into my car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there as I drove away, small, broken, and silent. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness either. What I felt was freedom. Weeks later, I got the final update from my lawyer. The house had sold for nearly double what my parents paid for it. I didn't keep a cent. I had the proceeds quietly donated to a scholarship fund for kids who'd grown up with nothing. Kids who'd been told, like me once, that they'd never make it. The news of the sale reached my parents through Madison. She sent one last message. They're moving into a small apartment in the city. Mom cries a lot. Dad doesn't talk much. I hope you're happy now. I read it once, then deleted it. Because happiness wasn't the point. Peace was. Months later, standing on the balcony of my villa again, I watched the ocean stretch endlessly into the horizon. The same view I used to stare at from my car window, hungry and tired and invisible. Now it was mine, not because of revenge, but because I'd stopped chasing people who never wanted to see me win. I thought about calling them one last time. Thought about saying something, anything. But then I realized there was nothing left to say. They had chosen their story. I had chosen mine. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's silence. I finished my coffee, walked back inside, and closed the balcony doors behind me. That was the last time I ever looked back.